Osio Sildanela. Osta Tuhiju. Hello, family. How are you? Losachim Ames. Kivi Akui Kiviago. May God bless you. That's Yaki. Uh, Dawaton Yona Kani Ke. My name is Black Bear. Douste Nantene. What's up? Let's jump right into the discussion tonight. And this is the Black Bear Medicine Bag Show, starring your host, Black Bear, aka C. Walker. Tonight, we will be doing something that I don't usually and often do. I will be discussing Black Indian genealogy. The reason that I did this was I was watching a brother who is enrolled as a Creek citizen, and I noticed he was charging $50 to $75 to help other Black natives. You never have to pay any money to start your genealogy. In fact, I have a book right here called Black Indian Genealogy by Angela Y. Walton Raji, and she is a member of, I think, the Chata Freeman, and I think Cherokee Freeman too, if I'm not wrong. I'll correct that if I'm wrong. I'll do some more research and ask a friend. This is part one, Black Indian genealogy. Slavery has always been part of the Americas. If it wasn't from one tribe like the Mexica, Aztec conquering other native smaller like the Tal- Talasco or conquering Mayans, it was the Haudenosaunee fighting against and conquering the Anihahuia people, the Cherokee people, back and forth, or the Cherokee people raiding and fighting against the Shawnee and the Lenape, other native nations around them, and made them slaves. But the difference was, at first, before they had encountered the white man, the Spaniards, the French, the English, the Americans, their way was more or less, I'm replacing my son, my daughter. But as time went on, it was no longer I'm replacing my son and daughter, and in time you would become part of the tribe and be adopted into a clan system, but it'd be cattle slavery. Let's move forward a little. According to most modern American history, they said the first African slave, was brought in 1619. But if you go further back, the English wasn't the first one in the New World on Turtle Island. We have to go further back, 1492, when Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And when the Spaniards went and it came in to North America near Georgia, they're off the island of Georgia. There's recorded the first ones were African slaves, and for 2 months they were there until the natives of that region raided and burnt down the settlement, and the African enslaved individuals joined forces and lived peacefully among the natives. There are many accounts of natives and Africans seeking shelter and protection from native villages and all around. I will get into that more, and I have to mention one of the well-known tribes is the Seminole. Let's go into deep and figure out what's going on and why is this so, and what's the disconnect nowadays. And also to mention, check out part two of Black Indian genealogy when I have my friend from Muskogee, Oklahoma, slash Tulsa, dig deeper into the Cherokee Freeman, Chickasaw, Choctaw, Seminole bands, tribal members. Get back at me at later on tonight. All right. So the concept that slavery was nothing new to the Cherokees. They would take white settlers as slaves. They would take other Indian nations. They would take whoever to profit off of as time went on, when the English started to push in further and further inland and started to take over. You know, you might concept that slavery among indigenous people was better than being enslaved to a white person. But it depended on the individual. Were they full blood? Did they follow the traditional way and they didn't believe in it in all? Did they were they traditional somewhat and they believed that every person had a right, had a spirit, had a being, had something to be respected? Or did they think more like the mixed blood class was white and indigenous and thought them as property only? Because a lot of these concepts were adopted when as time went on. Yes, slavery existed before the white man, to be fair and honest, but the concept of cattle slavery did not exist among them. We would be part of the tribe, be able to marry and become one with the nation. You know, one of the things that one of the notorious slave owners among the Cherokees was Nancy Ward. She actually betrayed her people. Yes, she betrayed a whole Cherokee war party. They considered her a traitor, and she was awarded slaves by the white community because she saved the whole white community that was over there. The white settlers that came in and to rob and steal and kill the Ania Onhaya, the Cherokee people in Tennessee. Later, that her people suffered from that. Another notorious chief was known to take natives was Chief Doublehead. It was reported that Chief Doublehead actually took a freed black slave and he had to go to court and sue him in order to get free from that that episode. John Ross is a tribal leader, important tribal Cherokee leader. He was a very wealthy major slave owner. Before he moved to Oklahoma, he had 5 major estates. Another important slave owner among the Cherokee was John Martin, another tribal leader with over 100 slaves. When we put that 100 slaves. Another aspect of slavery is the sexual aspect of not having no power over your body. During cattle slavery, both the whites and the natives practice this, and that's why we do have the intermixture of the indigenous slave masters that was there also. It depends, but there were also a lot of Cherokee women who intermarried with black men or African men. Depends on their status. I'll go into that a little bit later. Or free men of color. There was a lot of different statuses that they set up, basically. And there was actually on the Trail of Tears, they never mentioned there was 1,600 Negroes that were removed to Cherokee territory. And I want to bring this up for people who don't believe me when they say there were actually African slaves. I want to read this is from Article 3, Section 4 of the Cherokee Nation Adopted Constitution after the parts of the United States. It is interesting to note some of the passage pertaining to slavery. Okay, this is their constitution. Listen to it. No person should be eligible to sit in the general council but a free Cherokee male citizen who should have attained to the age of 25 years old. Man, so you had to be over the age of 21. The descendants of a Cherokee free woman except the African race, those whose parents had been living together as man and wife according to the custom and laws of his nation, and should be entitled to the privileges of the nation, as well as the prosperity of Cherokee women by all free men. No person of Negro or mulatto percentage, neither by father or mother side, should be eligible to hold a seat in government or profit honor, or trust under this government. Footnote reads Laws of the Cherokee Nation adopted by the Council on various periods, Tahlequah, Cherokee, Oklahoma. Then says Cherokee Advocate Office, 1952, page 242 through 243. So just think that law that was passed. If you were half black from your father, see, this is kind of interesting. If you were any other race, your father was besides African or Negro, and your mother was Cherokee, with Cherokee. Now it's crazy how they put that in effect where you couldn't hold office, but you were still free. You were still considered Cherokee by blood always, because in the Cherokee culture, they were matrilineal and they traced their people through the mother side. Okay, let me say that again. Trace their lineage through their mother. So no matter what your nation your father was, whatever race your father was, it didn't matter. Matter who your mother was. Okay, I'm gonna read something about Chief Doublehead. This is the man fighting for his rights, and he wrote the letter to the Cherokee Nation. And it says, "My color unfortunately incapacitates me from applying personally to your honor. In 1802, my former master, W. Smith, on his death, ordered me to be liberated from bondage by paying his son $400, the greater part of which I paid and was then liberated. Doublehead seized my property with myself, the cattle he retained for his own use. Myself, he sold to Captain John Campbell of the 2nd U.S. Regiment Infantry to the value of $400. I trust your honor will be so good as to infer in my cause and obtain my freedom." So you see, there was a system where he could go to the Cherokee Nation and ask for his freedom back. You know what I mean? Nobody really talks about this, though. There was a great rebellion in the Cherokee Nation and also the Chickasaw and the Choctaws. Blacks started learning that there was freedom in Mexico because Mexico ended slavery in the 1840s, 20 years before the United States did. And they knew they could be free in Mexico. So in 1842, a group of slaves, along with the Chickasaw Creek and other, fled. About 200 slaves, mostly Cherokee, and it was thought some Creeks joined the rebellion, also from the Chickasaw and Choctaw, so they sent the light horsemen after them. Their intention was to reach Mexico, a land that they heard was free. Like I said before, they got supplies from Fort Smith. You know, they got ammunition and everything. They didn't kill their enslavers, which I thought that was crazy, but they locked them up. You know, but they were caught somewhere that was 40 miles from the border of Mexico. 40 miles. And they ran out of food and ammunition. And then after they ran out of food and ammunition and fresh horses, the leaders were killed. The rest were sent to Joseph Van's boat for the remainder of their lives. All right, sorry about that long pause, everybody. So they decided that in the Cherokee Nation that they would actually make codes, and one of the codes said to be intact by the National Council that it would be made by the sheriff that several districts in this nation to notify all free Negroes who may be in this nation, exception such as has been freed by our citizens, that they must leave the limits from this nation by the first day of January 1843, as soon as thereafter may be partial. It is further intact that there should be any free Negroes, as for say, to refuse to obey to order of the sheriff. It shall be the sheriff's duty to report such Negroes to the United States agents for the Cherokees for immediate expulsion from the nation. You hear that? They would actually go to the U.S. agents, which is most likely U.S. Marshals, to remove you out of Cherokee territory. And this is kind of where the black towns kind of got started from, somewhat, in Oklahoma, away from the nations. But my good friend will break it down. All right, now among the Chickasaw, the Creeks, and that they were considered civilized because down in Georgia, they actually would trade with the Unega white man and intermarry with the white man. It'd be an Indian woman and a European man. And some of the common names that are indigenous that for black indigenous people you might want to look up: Ross, McIntosh, Love, LaFleur, Johnson were not unusual in Indian communities. Remember those last names. Now, in the back of this Black Indigenous book, since we are talking about genealogy, and I'm trying to give, like, the background story of how all of the, you know, free men and all of them came about. You know what I'm saying? I'm going to leave a lot of that to my friend from Oklahoma. He's going to break that down more. But some of the surnames in Alabama, I'm just going to read a few. Adams, Alexander, Bruce, Carpenter, Chambers. These are, but there's more. This is on page 181 in the Black Indigenous book. I'm going to do my favorite state where some of my indigenous ancestors are. Well, I do see the last name Mitchell, Mike, Mayers, McWilliams, McMillan, McGee. These are all common indigenous last names that you could find through this book. That's why I'm telling you, one of the best places to start is at Mississippi Vital Records, Alabama Vital Records. What you want to do is go back to your family, your oldest person, find out who that grandmother, that grandfather was. Did they stay in Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Kentucky? Did they avoid the Trail of Tears? I put them in another category. Is there an old Bible in the family? Some people's family written things in a Bible. Other people you could find, like on Ancestry.com, is a great source to start to link up with other family members who share the same DNA. One time on my mom's side, because from my mom's side, I'm Mexican, indigenous, Yaqui, Apache, and Cherokee, I found somebody that was Yavapai, from the Yavapai Nation, and he hasn't got back to me. But, we share a common ancestor. So when you do Ancestry.com, don't always just look at the DNA. Look at common people that you share the common ancestor. This could help you. I found my great-grandfather's registration for World War I on Ancestry.com. Another thing, I found my great-grandmother's Somebody, it could have been my great grandmother, was on National Archives. These things are free. Don't always pay somebody to do your research. You do your research, because when I looked up my great grandma Mary Mitchell, there's two or three different Mary Mitchells that are from Oklahoma. When I go to Mississippi, there's even more Mary Mitchell. So there's a lot of common names. They could be white, they could be black, they could be native, or they could be mixed of all three of those people. You have to get to know who your people are. Don't pay nobody. You do the footwork. You do the groundwork. So when somebody goes through, it makes it a lot easier. And you know what I'm saying, to make sure this is the right person. Because in first thing, the Cherokee Nation and Chickasaw Nation, they're gonna want a death certificate and birth certificate. So if you already got the birth certificate and the death certificate of the individual that you trying to enroll with, that's even better. You have half the war over, and if it matches up, you could potentially be a tribal member. But I'm gonna have my friend tonight. He's gonna come back on. I wasn't gonna go too far in this because there's gonna be part one, part two, maybe part three with this book. It's called Black Indians Genealogy. We covered the first somewhat topics, but I wanted to dive in just to let you know the Black Seminoles, didn't start off black. Okay, let me explain the situation. They were the Muskogees that came down there because the lower creeks had a war with the upper creeks. The Muskogees were more traditional and didn't believe in slavery until they went to Oklahoma. Then they became slavers. But at first, they weren't slavers. They fought against the lower creeks, the white sticks, right? There was the red sticks and the white sticks. And there were other divisions of creeks. Coosa, they're the yellow sticks. They're more northern. So they had this great war, and so they fled. The Muskogees, who survived the war, because it was the Creeks, the lower Creeks, the Cherokees, I think the Choctaws, along with the United States government, and they beat the Red Sticks. So the Red Sticks fled to Florida. There were other bands of other natives already down in Miccosukee, the Calusa, the Appalachians. So they formed their own coalition, and they come from the Spanish word, say, cimarron, means runaway, right? Cimarron. And then they just started saying Seminole. But they all have their own language. There's a lot of them. They're related to the Yamasee. So there's a lot of different natives mixed together. Then African slaves or Negroes were run among them because they couldn't run so far north. They were too down south. So going to the northern part of Florida was the best idea. And then so they started to get beat. And during the Second War, John Horse decided to go to Oklahoma. And when he went to Oklahoma, the same people who Muskogee Creeks that was their allies started to try to enslave them, and they were taking a lot of Seminoles. So they decided to move to Nacimiento, Mexico. And in between the years of 1949, I think it was 19, let me find that real quick. 19, I think, not 19, 1849 through 50, they did this. And they actually worked as mercenaries. And they protected the land for the Spanish, and for the Mexicans, not the Spanish, the Mexican army. And they were able to get land in Nacimiento, Mosque, and other parts of Mexico. And then United States recruited them as scouts. All right, well, I'm not going to stay too much longer. I'm going to go ahead and let you guys go and go to my other podcast. Hope to hear from you in an hour. All right.